In this video, let's take a look at the two types of packages that we can install with npm and also the two types of installs that there are. So the two types of packages that we can install are simple dependencies or development dependencies. Now, simple or regular dependencies are simply packages that contain some code that we will include in our own code. So code upon which we build our own applications. And that's why we actually call them dependencies, because our project and our code depend on them to work correctly. For example, Express, which is again the Node framework that we're going to be using later in the course, that will be a dependency. Okay? So let's now install our very first dependency just to show you how it works. And the package that we're going to install is called Slugify, which is a small tool that we can use to make more readable URLs out of names. For example, like product names in the case of our Node Farm example. So in order to install a simple dependency, in npm all we have to do is say npm install and then the name of the package, which is simply Slugify. Okay? In previous versions, you would also have to say -- save, like this, but right now that's no longer necessary. And so if you just specify npm install Slugify, it will then install this package as a regular dependency. And watch what happens to our package.json file once that installation is done. Okay? So we'll hit return now, and let's see what happens. And actually that was really fast, and it installed our package right away, and then created this new field here called dependencies, and put our first dependency, Slugify, right in there. Okay, it also then has the version of the package, but we're going to talk a bit more about that later in this section. All right, so this is our first dependency, and again, this is just a regular dependency. And we will use Slugify right in the next video, okay? So just to get a sense of how we use these third-party dependencies in our code. But right now what I want to show you is that besides these regular dependencies, we also have development dependencies. And these are usually just tools for development. For example, like a code bundler, like Webpack, or a debugger tool, or a testing library. So these are development dependencies. They are not needed for production, so our code does not really depend on them. We simply use them to develop our applications. So let's now install a dev dependency, which is just a short name for development dependency. And the tool that we're going to install is called Nodemon. So npm install Nodemon like this. And then what we have to do to specify that this is a development dependency is to say save dev. And so this will then add an entry to this package.json in the dev dependencies. So let's actually take a look at that. Okay, so once this is done installing. Now Nodemon is a very nice tool that helps us develop Node.js applications by automatically restarting the Node application whenever we change some files in our working directory. Okay, so remember that in the project, I was actually closing down the server all the time and then restarting it each time that I was changing the code. But with this tool, that's no longer necessary. So it will automatically restart the server each time that we do a change. Okay, so it's now done installing, and it created a new field called dev dependencies, and then of course added Nodemon in there. And so our project now basically knows that we depend on this tool here to develop our application and this package here to actually build our code base. All right, so these are the two types of packages. Now let's also talk about the two types of installs of these packages. Because right now, all we did was to install these packages locally. Okay, so they only work in this project. And we can actually see that right here in our project folder because npm created this new folder called node modules for us. And so it has all the dependencies of our project. But now you might ask, well, we only specified Slugify and NodeMon. So what are all of these packages doing here? Well, that's simply because they in turn are dependencies of our dependencies. Okay? So if, for example, Slugify needs one of these packages, well, then npm will install these dependencies as well. And so we end up with all of these dependencies here in our project. All right. So these are our local modules. So Slugify and NodeMon, again, we just installed them locally in our project folder, and they're not going to work anywhere else. But with npm, we can also have global installs. And global installs will then be available anywhere, not just in our project folder, but in every folder across your entire machine. So a package should be installed globally when it provides an executable command that you can run from the command line interface. And NodeMon, for example, is one tool like that. So I use NodeMon in all Node projects that I work on, and so I have NodeMon installed as a global dependency, because that way I don't have to install it each time that I'm creating a new project. I can simply use it in a new project because it's already installed globally. Okay, so let's now actually do that. Clear the console here, and then install it globally. So npm install, and that's actually a shorthand for install. It actually is enough to just write I like this. Okay, and so that's actually usually how I do it. So npm I NodeMon, and then the flag global. Hit return now, and so now it is being installed globally. But it actually gives us this error. And if you're on a Mac and did it like this, then it will also give you an error, simply because you don't have the permissions to install this package. Okay, so if you're on a Mac, it doesn't work, and I believe on Windows it should work. At least that's the experience that I have. But if you're on a Mac, you have to actually put sudo in front of it and then put in your password. All right? So basically just to give it permission. Well, in my case, I have Touch ID, but yeah, if you don't have that, you can use your user account password. Anyway, now that works, and we can now start using NodeMon on this project. So let me actually show you how it works. So before, to run our app, we did it like this. So we wrote node and then index.js. What I did here now was actually an autocomplete, and I think I hadn't talked to you about that at this point. So let me go ahead and delete this. So I started typing the I here, and since there is no other file which starts with an I can now hit tab, and so it will automatically complete the rest of the file name for me. So we used to do it like this, then hit return, and then whenever we wanted to do some change, we would have to exit it like this and restart everything again. But that's no longer the case because now we have NodeMon. So all we have to do is to, instead of writing node, we write NodeMon and then index.js. Okay, and so now it's watching every file with every extension. All right, so if we go now back to our file here, we don't even need to change anything. All I have to do is to give it a save and take a look at what happens down here in the console. So I will save it now, and you see restarting due to changes. And so now it started again, node index.js. So you see that behind the scenes, it is actually still running the original command that we used to do. So node index.js. And so NodeMon is basically just a wrapper around that node command, simply to make our lives a bit easier. All right, so this is an extremely handy tool for us to work with Node. And for the rest of the course, I will always be using NodeMon instead of the node command. And now, just to finish, there's one more small thing that I wanted to show you here. So let's say we didn't install NodeMon globally. Well, how would we then use our dev dependency here locally? So the local NodeMon that we have installed. Well, we couldn't simply run it from the command line because the local dependencies, they don't work like that. We cannot simply use them right away in the command line. But what we can do is to specify an npm script. All right, and we do that here in this script field. Now, when we did npm init, it actually put this one script here for us, which is for testing, and then simply said that we don't have any tests specified. So that is just like a placeholder for us now, which we can replace now with start, and then nodemon index.js. Okay, and this nodemon that I'm using here will actually be the nodemon coming from the dev dependencies. So instead of writing the command down here in the command line like I did here, I will simply put the same thing into an npm script. Okay, and the script is called start in this case, and now we will be able to run that. So let me finish this one here. And so this is how we run an npm script. npm run and start. And indeed, it gives us the command here, nodemon index.js, and now everything works the exact same way as before. Right? And this has nothing to do with the fact that we installed nodemon globally before. It simply works like this because, again, nodemon is our dev dependency. Right here in the npm script, we can then write something like a command line interface instruction that is going to use that local dependency and not the global one. So again, this would have worked just fine without nodemon installed globally. So this is how you specify npm scripts, and we will do a bunch more throughout this course, and we can give them all sorts of names. Start is kind of a default one for development. And so actually for start, we don't even have to write npm run start, but writing npm start is actually enough to trigger this special command. So you see again, it works just fine like this. Perfect. So in this video, you learned the difference between regular dependencies and development dependencies, and then you also learned that you can install them either locally or globally. Or you can also install them in both places, right? But actually, usually the global dependencies that we install are usually always development tools, because they are the ones who make more sense to install like that. Again, because they usually provide us like a nice command line interface program. In the next video, we will then use this dependency that we installed here actually in our code, so that you learn how to actually include a third-party module into your code.